Hi, everyone. Welcome to the October InKY Reading, the all virtual series this year. We're so glad that you joined us tonight, and forgive me for my terrible lighting. I'm in my basement to escape all my children and dogs. They're the loud ones. My name is Amy Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of Louisville Literary Arts. And we are so pleased to bring Ellen Birkett Morris and Tony Brewer to the virtual stage tonight. I think you'll enjoy hearing Ellen's fiction and Tony's performance poetry. Before we get started, I have a few announcements, and then I'll add a few more as we go on. I am going to post where you can find both Tony and Ellen's books locally at Carmichael's, and if I have the information from their publisher, so that we can support indies. So if you open your chat, I will be posting that in that momentarily. So I also want to mention that Ellen taught a really wonderful fiction class the other night for us, and we have been offering a lot more workshops virtually since the pandemic, and it's been wonderful. We've had so many wonderful instructors. I see Katie Yoakum is on, and she has taught for us as well, and has a great class coming up. Check it out. It is called Creative Self-Care. So if you have been struggling to write during the pandemic, I know I have, check out Katie's class. I will be posting these things in the chat, so you'll have the links. Also, Tony is offering a class on Tuesday. This class is called The Occasional Poem, and maybe Tony can tell us a little bit about it. What is this class about, Tony?
Sure. So occasional poems are poems written for occasions. The ones I want to focus on specifically are poems that someone specifically asked a specific poet to write for an occasion. So not so much you being inspired by an occasion to write about it, but someone asking you, like a friend asks you to write a poem for their wedding that you will read at the reception, that sort of thing. And there are some famous ones too. Presidential inaugurations, some of them have had poets read poems they've written for them. I also have written poetry on demand for about the past 10 years at various events, and so I'll talk about some of those experiences and share some examples.
Great. Thank you so much. So I put the link to Tony's workshop and to Katie's Creative Self-Care workshop in the chat box. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, just move your cursor at the bottom of the screen and you should be able to find the chat and click on that. It'll open a window and you should be able to access those links. So if you haven't already, go ahead and mute yourself. You guys are good. It looks like everybody's muted. And let's get moving. So first we have local author Ellen Birkett Morris. Is that how you like?
That's
okay.
it.
I've
Yeah.
been pronouncing it wrong all these years.
Okay.
She is the author of the short story collection Lost Girls, which just came out. Did it come out last month? Was it September?
Actually, it came out at the end of June, so I'm about
The
3
end of
months
June.
in. Yeah, so.
That's wonderful. She's also the author of Surrender, a poetry chapbook. Her work has appeared in journals, including Shenandoah, the Antioch Review, South Carolina Review, and more. She was a finalist for the 2019 Rita Dove Poetry Prize, semi-finalist for the Story Quarterly Prize, and winner of the Bevel Summers Prize for Fiction given by Shenandoah. Morris has an MFA from Queen's University, Charlotte. Let's all snap our fingers for Ellen.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm really, really glad to be here. Today is the kind of day where I wish that I had a short story about a fly, but I don't. So I'm just going to delve into the one that I do have, which is called Kodachrome. Mama never knew about the pictures, the ones I found, the one I took, or the one that was taken of me. Her idea of a picture was the family photo in the Slocum Baptist Church directory, all of us with perfectly combed hair and wearing the same fake smile. I found the magazine during spring cleaning. It lay under my parents' mattress, pinned against the hard metal box spring. There was a lady on the front in her nightie, and not one of those flannel ones I wear in the wintertime. Despite being well worn, its pages were still glossy. When the light hit the page, it left a shine that reminded me of the sun hitting the window of Goody's candy store in the late afternoon. Inside, naked women were on their knees, lying on shag carpets, sprawled across modern furniture with their legs wide open. I saw the colors: bright red lipstick, raven black and golden blonde hair, and every shade of pink. I'd seen Mama's body plenty of times, interrupting her bath by perching on the toilet, lid down, to tell her about what had happened in school that day. Compared to these women, Mama looked faded, used up, stretched out. I'd taken the magazine out when Mama was at her card party or at the grocery, and I was always careful to put it back in exactly the same place. We had just gotten a Kodak Instamatic with a magic cube flash. I love snapping the small glass cube with a sketch of the sun on it into place. I'd look through the viewfinder and expect to see something extraordinary. What I saw was Mama and Daddy, same as ever, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. I'd wait until they started fidgeting, hoping to uncover something new. The pictures were nothing special, except sometimes their eyes were red. Later, I would refer to my parents as traditional, but when I was 12, they just seemed unbearably dull. My mama had been a home ec major at University of Kentucky, where she learned to make the perfect pie crust. Daddy loved walking in the woods and spent hours in the basement separating screws by size and placing them into coffee cans. The thought of them doing what the pictures suggested was beyond imagining. If they had to do it, I was sure my mama would imagine assembling a perfect casserole, and my daddy would be thinking of what lay beneath the hood of his car. Slocum, where I'd lived forever, was especially boring. I was plain old Hannah Starnes with dirty blonde hair and long legs that made me look like a stork. If only I could get a picture that showed my true colors. One Sunday, I faked sick by holding a warm washcloth to my head for 15 minutes. It's not bad, but she's warm, Mama told Daddy. They decided I should stay home. I snuck the Instamatic upstairs and took a picture of myself. I lay back on the bed and pulled up my shirt. My sweat-covered hands shook. Point, aim. The camera slipped from my fingers as I pressed the button. Pop, our last flash cube gone. I used up the rest of the roll, taking pictures of our cat Max lying in the sun on the front porch. I rode my bike to South Point and paid my own money to get the pictures developed. My picture was a blur. I wanted to believe that the smudge of pink I saw was my nipple. That was the year Jasper Max came to town. He was different, with his beard and jacket with the elbow patches. Miss Allen, the school librarian, said he was famous for taking pictures of the Vietnam War. He was traveling across the country, taking shots of small towns for the bicentennial. He showed up at a church supper with his camera and spent almost the whole time walking from table to table, introducing himself. I watched him sitting on a park bench, taking pictures of the garden club ladies, working on beds of petunias. On Saturday, Jasper Max stood on the bleachers, taking shots of the boys scattered across the dusty brown baseball field. He almost got a picture of Abby Linder as she decorated the window of the candy store. She held a huge model of a lollipop in one hand and wagged her finger at Jasper with the other. He shrugged and moved slowly down the street in search of another subject. He was even in the graveyard as my friends and I played hide and seek, our stealthy movements accompanied by the click of his camera. I jumped from behind a gravestone and made a face at the camera, eyes crossed, tongue to the side. His laughter was rich and deep. I laughed too. He raised his camera and looked at me through the viewfinder. I stuck my tongue out and then hopped on my bike and headed home. I saw him again on the bench outside of Goody's. He let me touch the camera, hold it to my eye. The town looked different through that lens. The courthouse, library, even the grocery store was important. Afterwards, I gave him some good and plenty. He ate every one. From then on, Jasper Max and I were friends. He told me about lenses and apertures, and I introduced him to bottle caps and jujubes. He told me he was from Boston. He said it just like that. I asked if that was near Boston, and he laughed his big laugh. I liked the look on his face when he saw something he wanted to capture, and the way he waited for just the right shot. I'd watch him shifting from foot to foot until I heard the click. Jasper Max wanted to take my family's picture. I knew he'd be able to help me see my colors. I told him Mama said to come on Wednesday afternoon. That was the day she put on her fancy clothes and had lunch with friends in Andersonville. Wednesday afternoon, I put on a pair of Mama's high heels and wobbled over to the closet to pick out my prettiest dress, the one with the princess neckline dotted with small yellow flowers. I felt grown up letting Jasper into the house. Our living room had a bay window. Jasper said the light was good and set up his camera there. I looked around. Polished wood floors, an old couch covered with a crocheted throw, no white rug, shag carpeting, or leopard print. This would have to do. Where are your folks? He asked. They probably got delayed at the hardware store. Why don't you just get a shot of me to warm up? I stood in front of the window, swaying a bit on the high heels. When Jasper leaned down to take the lens off his camera, I slid my dress off. The air felt cold on my breast. Jasper looked up, his eyes filled with surprise. He told me to get dressed. I reached back and grabbed the throw from the couch and wrapped it around my bare shoulders. The throw smelled of popcorn and cherry soda. Suddenly shy, I folded my arms in front of me. I felt the warmth of the sun as it shone through the window behind me, illuminating my colors. I smiled at Jasper and heard the click of his camera. He took several shots, then it was over. With her arms crossed, covered with the Afghan, Jasper could see the woman she would become. She looked him right in the eye, her chin up, a slight smile on her lips. The bright light shone in through the bay window, illuminating her. He took the picture quickly, praying that her parents wouldn't drive up. Why did you take your clothes off? I wanted to be seen in all my colors, she said. It was a curious answer, one he didn't understand. The picture of her standing in the window would become his favorite from his time on the road, capturing her strength, innocence, and possibility. They aren't due anytime soon, are they? No, Hannah admitted. Jasper packed up his camera as Hannah put her dress back on. I expected to feel different, older, special somehow, but I didn't. I wondered about the picture he took of me, if my colors had shown through. School began again in late August. I stopped looking at the magazine. The Instamatic gathered dust in the closet and was replaced by other passions. A new transistor radio, the music of Elton John. I almost forgot about Jasper altogether. When I was a senior, my class took a field trip to the Indianapolis Museum. I walked through the museum and saw Jasper's name above the door of a gallery. There was a special exhibit of his work. I saw a picture of a toddler building a sandcastle, Terry from the diner holding a plate of pancakes, and Pete Phillips standing in front of a forest with steam rising from his outstretched hands and a look of bliss on his face. Then I glanced at the hollowed out frame of a burning barn with flames still rising and a boy standing in the doorway covering his eyes. My photograph was in the right corner. It was smaller than I thought it would be. I stood wrapped in the old blanket, the sun forming a halo behind me. It was a good likeness. I looked hopeful, expectant, but I never did get to see my colors. The picture was in black and white.
Thank you, Ellen. That was amazing. We will have a Q&A at the end of the readings. So if you have questions for either Ellen or Tony or both, please, you can use the chat or you can unmute yourself at the end. We'd love to hear what you have to say. I have a few more announcements for you. One thing I wanted to mention is that LLA is having a membership drive right now. So if you are a member, it's a great time to renew. And if you haven't joined before, you can receive 25% off of our workshops. And if you're a member and you want to take Katie's class, which is a 4-week workshop, it's a $20 savings. So it's really worth it. I'll put that link in the chat so you can see that. And I can answer any questions by email at any time. We also have an interview coming up with debut author Farah Alexander. She is the author of Raising the Resistance, A Mother's Guide to Practical Activism. And I'm so excited to get to talk to her about her writing journey and how this book came to be. And we will be talking to her on October 20th. It's a free event. I hope you can make it. Okay, let's dive back in with Tony Brewer. Let me also put Ellen's, a link to buy Ellen's book at Carmichael's in the chat so that you know where you can find it. So there you go. And let's get Tony on the virtual stage. Tony Brewer is a poet, event producer, voice actor, and live sound effects artist from Bloomington, Indiana. He is executive director of the spoken word stage at the 4th Street Arts Festival, and his books include The Great American Scapegoat, Little Glove in Big Hand, Hot Type, Cold Read, and Homunculus. He also has work in the anthologies And Know This Place, Poetry of Indiana, and Writers Resist, Hoosier Writers Unite. He has been twice nominated for a Pushcart Prize and has made numerous recordings for the Linen of Words on WFHB Community Radio and the Poets Weave on WFIU Public Radio. He co-founded the first poetry slam in Indiana in 2001 and competed, coached, and toured with a team until 2006. Tony has been offering poetry on demand at coffee houses, museums, cemeteries, churches, bars, and art and music festivals for over 10 years. And he is 1/3 of the poetry performance group Reservoir Dogwoods. Please welcome Tony Brewer.
Hi, Amy. Hey, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks to Amy for having me. And thanks to InKY and Louisville Literary Arts for having me as well. I'm going to read I'm going to read at least one poem from all of my books. I want to try and read some new things too. And I'm also going to squeeze in a couple of poems on demand. I've got some examples of that kind of as a prelude to the webinar I'm doing next week. So I don't have anything about flies, but I do have this one in my most recent book, Homunculus, and this is a very short one with good reason. This is called I Understand, means stop talking in the shorthand of power. To know the meaning of the words, infer what's implied, followed by negating but. A stop palm to the chest, listening intently for the chance to speak again. And this is why we will never get over it. They are out there who wronged you, and inside, sometimes you. Revenge builds wardens acting like guards who want paychecks and safe houses, but do not live there. Administrative judgment and managed expectations are above my pay grade. Recidivists think like you, different this time. Baby, I love you this time. Killing to come home, but do not live there. Rehabilitation is a nice idea. Never let go your justice drive. Cruelty gets results. Information, respect. History, its autopsy. What we find inside is never not children. What's it like to be wrong, unfixable, untrue? The waiting period for revenge is a sentence. We are out there and down in it. So that's a couple from Homunculus. I want to read some new things that I've written since the big lockdown. I do the 30 and 30 every April, which is kind of the poet's answer to NaNoWriMo, trying to write a novel in a month. So poets write 30, trying to write a poem a day for the month of April. And I've been writing a poem a day for the month of April this was my 13th year of doing that. And the way I do it is if I get behind, then I owe another one the next day, right? So, but I can't pay it forward. So if I do go on get a creative jag and write two, I still owe another one the next day. So this was a tough year to try and write a poem a day, but I wanted to make it happen. So I think the worst stretch was I got about 6 poems behind, but I still managed to finish 30 by April 30th. So I was pretty happy about that. Keeping the streak alive. So I'm going to read 3 from that time period. This one is, I got a chapbook from a friend of mine by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and it had his poem Pity the Nation in it with a little epigraph that said, after Gibran, Khalil Gibran. And so I kind of wrote this in a Ferlinghetti mode or mood. This is called Pity for Sale, after Ferlinghetti, after Gibran. Pity the bee who has no country, its fuzzy swollen appetite and hardwired love of candy. Pity the window, gladly accepting so many waves of heat and hand, fogged with condensation of desire. Pity the vegetable in its untouchable packet, disguised as itty-bitty seeds that are mere possibilities. Pity the failed backup and make it new. Pity the ambulance, so lonely it stalks my next-door neighbor twice this year alone. Alone. Pity the billionaires in love with zeros. No, fuck those clowns right in the zero. Pity the worker who identifies with a king. Pity the tree dragged down by sweet honeysuckle, the redbuds pinking the woods, telling us it is time. Time. Pity the time it takes to feel, the time it takes to unfeel, to unlearn, to unlove, to unseal. Pity our ranks and forms, a slot for everyone when we all would be better off marked other. My country, 'tis not insane, but copes horrendously. Sweet land, sweet liberty. Ask any busy bee. This I got accepted by the Beatnik Cowboy, which is an online zine. This is called Our Solemn Debris. In the quiet of the evening of the end, with the sidewalks empty and traffic non-existent, one by one, neighbors wheel separate trash and recycling totes to the curb automatically, trained in uniform as their gray and yellow bins. We are keeping it together, 1 foot from the street and at least 4 feet apart, so tomorrow morning the mechanical arm of the upgraded truck can grip with assurance and hoist receptacles like whiskey shots, knocking back into a wet brown gob compacted toasts for every human the virus tucks away behind nuclear doors, inwardly thrashing with panic, yet calm enough to save reusables from a landfill fate. This one is another lockdown poem, Rona poem. I call these Rona poems. We call them Rona poem. Anything I've written during this time period is a Rona poem. It's another Rona poem. This got picked up by Pulp Poets Press. It's another little online zine. This is Shifting Blame, and this is a true story because I had a real ant problem earlier this year. I got kind of obsessed with them because it was kind of just me and the ants here in the house, you know. So Shifting Blame. The ants make their way into my kitchen sink on the ivy growing around the pipes under the house. Disoriented scouts searching for a morsel or a place to build a new nest. I pinch them one by one and throw them into dirty dishwater. Not a bug problem or a food left out problem, a who's in charge issue. Workers and the landlord fighting over crumbs and housing, while roots, oblivious to my foundations, creep untouchable in the dark. So yeah, I do poetry on demand, and I've been doing poetry on demand for, this would have been 10 years of poetry on demand, but I've made maybe 3 poems for people all year, and it's kind of killing me because by this point I should be well over 100 by this point. It's taken me a while to kind of get to that level of output, but I typically write close to 150 or 200 a year for people at this point. So I wanted to read a couple of examples kind of in advance of the webinar next week. And these were fairly random. I just picked these because I like them, not so much because of the tone. I think they work kind of outside of their context, but I'll give you the context too. This was from September 7th, 2017. And this was at an arts event on campus at Indiana University. And if I remember correctly, the request was a poem for, I don't think I met the dog, but this was for someone's dog named Max. And this is called Maximum Dog. I know we have dog people here, so I think I chose wisely. Maximum Dog. Oh, you butt to mutt of tongue and sausage gut, wallowing on couches and impossible to make do anything unridiculous or properly dog-like. More like old man stink than puff of pup. And only once were you ever told no, because it just doesn't matter now, does it? So these are very short, and that's kind of part of the point of poetry on demand, because you have to make them very quickly. This one was, this is an interesting story. This is from Arts Fair on the Square, which is another art fair here in Bloomington from June 22nd, 2019, so not that long ago. And the prompt here, the gentleman kind of wanted a poem, kind of didn't want one, and as he was walking away, he said, "The one that got away." That was his prompt. And ironically, he never came back for the poem, so this ended up in the pile of, I think I just called them poems left behind, like, you know, poems that people didn't, and it's a pretty good stack by this point. So this is called The Anglers Lament. The Anglers Lament. My bait was not perfection, but still tempting to her, dangling in refracted light just below the surface like entendre and innuendo. Her bubbles, tiny kisses floating in my shallows. Suddenly, no, she's off the hook and away. But wait, I feel the tug still, like a phantom limb lost, like a dead limb lost, full of old hooks and lures. I pull, stuck, pull and wrangle. Old bait lost on the bottom of a body, and I will spend way too long trying to get free. And I'm going to do 2 more here. This one is from, make sure I can, this is from my previous book. Is that, yeah, that's facing the right way. Hot Type Cold Read. And this is about a trip I took to Maine, kind God, it's been 11 years now. It's hard to believe. But the guy that I went to visit, good friend of mine, a book designer that lives off on Deer Isle, which is this little island off the southeast coast of Maine, went to visit him. And this is about that whole experience. This is called Down East. My apologies to anyone from Boston. But that's what they told me. This is what they told me. I learned a lot while I was out there. So this is called Down East. Somewhere around here, Paul Stuckey started a radio station that has played Puff the Magic Dragon 24/7 since 1968, except for break-ins from Democracy Now! And the Hightower Report. People from Boston are called massholes. Limp shedders in a convenience store tank too long are yesterday's pound. Ask a local, lived here all your life? And he'll answer, not yet. Such happy yellow trousers with booties attached and suspenders extending out of a hang-down mustache as dark and downturned as the mouth underneath. He's a watercolor of a wharf, stacking cages and banding claws and thinking of his manicured ex-wife's painted nails and mouth. How she hated his Irish music, and boy, that was a deal breaker. He could have just not let her get that close instead of running all the way to Maine to escape after the divorce. But the sun isn't hiding when it doesn't show its face. A milky pearl and clam-colored skies. Here comes the squall. Snap. That's how the weather works here. A rock-bound smugness saying, you just don't know the world like we do. Thumbs under suspenders like tongues on long vowels dying at the back of the throat. A fish slides easily through the hand until the fins prick like quills when you try to hold it fast and scale and clean and gut it. He prefers claws and armor boiling in a pot and putting up a good fight with a hammer and tongs and a long buttery fork. Imagine trying to live here without synthetics, all oil skin and seal skin and real skin against wet wool dried over a smoky fire, and in another time, blubber. Fat people rich, now fat people poor. The boat is not his life. It's got a name, like a wife. And he loves every catch he dumps on her deck, writhing like a sequined dress she's not clean enough to wear. So it just lays there, all pretty on the bed. A radio's the only thing still running when a nor'easter knocks the power out. He cranks it like a phonograph, and out comes Elvis Costello, pretending he's Pete Seeger doing a terrible Burl Ives. That tremolo wheezing forth, he'd almost rather hear the news. And off the coast, a foghorn, sounding all night, all year, though no one lives there, ever since the keeper passed away, remote-controlled since 1958. He can tune a violin by it. G sharp. And the waves lapping the granite beach clean are whole rests. Thanks again to Amy for having me, and thank you all for being here this evening. I'm going to do one more for you, and this is kind of my version of a nature poem that I wrote a long time ago, 16 years to be exact, because next year is the year that they are coming back. The 17-year cicadas are going to join us once again, and so I wrote this in 2004, the last time they emerged. And this is a little love song that I wrote for the 17-year cicadas called Cicada Blues, chorus 10 and 17. Ooh, love to love you, baby. Ooh, love to love you, baby. Ooh, love to love you, baby. I will come back for you, baby. Maybe 17 years from tonight, but I will come for you. Up from the ground through a hole this big, and I'll crawl. I'll crawl across the lawn, baby. Drag my freshly hatched ass over sidewalks and quiet city streets just to get you to come to me. I'll climb the most convenient tree I find and shed this hard, crusty exterior and back out of my pupal state. And when I'm dry and strong enough and I unfurl my clear wings, I will call to you, call to you, call to you, call to you, and I hope you'll hear me. Among the million brothers in this humble acre alone, vying for your attention, and that you'll come to me. Come to me now, baby. Please don't make my soul wait on the cold ground another 17 long years. Come land on my beech branch, and we'll make sweet butt-to-butt love, and place our progeny within the spent sapling soiled pulp under a heavy haze of June on a long-lost Indiana afternoon, and then together we'll die. Ooh, love to love you, baby. Ooh, love to love you, baby. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
That was fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
I also would so rather listen to you singing than the cicadas that will be coming back.
That's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be bad. Well, last time was particularly bad. If I can for a second, that last time was particularly bad, at least in certain areas, and I think probably in Louisville, especially, and around Cincinnati, because two broods emerged at the same time. This
Oh,
was a
that's
rare,
right.
yeah, it's a rare event that only happens like every 12,000 years or something, where the two broods overlapped, and it was, yeah, it was terrible. I mean, it was awesome.
Daughter,
Terrible. So
my daughter used to, and it's not the 17-year ones because she's only 16, but she used to get the little shells that they would come out of and just stick them on her and walk around.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. So thank you, Tony, and thank you, Ellen, both wonderful readings. I have a few questions, but I want to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have a question? And if you do, you can either unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat and we can read it. Don't be shy.
Tony, I have to ask. First of all, you got Maine down. When you're not a Mainer, you're not from there.
No.
I just have to say, my husband went there. My ex-husband. We had to move to Kittery, Maine, in order to try to save the shipyard from being shut down. And
Oh, wow.
we got lost, and we asked directions, and the guy said, "So you come to close our base." I mean, it's just like they are just the gift that keeps on giving. You really got it.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask about your on demand. It sounds scary, but in a thrilling sort of way, like when you did Max the dog, and you didn't see the dog. I mean, what is it that you look for when you first? Because you got to find that thing. I mean, we all do. We wake up in the middle of the night and write down the thing. Sometimes we keep writing. I write more poetry than not. So I was curious, what's your thing to start it off on something so daring as On the Spot?
Well, I don't go cold. I mean, I have a little talk. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I appreciate your comments about Maine and all that. But no, I mean, I don't go in cold because, the first thing I ask is, do you want a poem? And if they say yes, well, they're already hooked. And so then I start talking and we have a conversation about what they want. And so I'm writing down as many details as possible. And sometimes it's a lot of details. Sometimes it's way more notes than I would ever write for anything I would write for myself. It's, they're almost dictating. And then sometimes it's a word, like the guy that said, the one that got away, it was just a phrase. So it wasn't even a full, And so I try and not only listen to what people say and write it down, but also how are they saying it? What's the thing that they're most excited about? What's the thing that makes them laugh? What's the thing that makes them sad? That sort of, and the thing, if I can, I don't have the notes in front of me, but the thing I remember is that Max was not a well-behaved dog, but of course was a sweet, good boy, because they all are, and loved to just wallow around on the couch, and just be a messy, sloppy dog. It's a very short poem, so that's pretty much what I got out of the exchange, and so that's what's in the poem. But it's it's told with some flair, and it's told my way of, it is similar to everything else that I read, but it's also different too, because it does contain somebody else's thing, it's somebody else's spark, so that can be difficult. I also recruit a lot of people to do poetry on demand with me. The 4th Street Festival that I do every year, I'll have a table and a tent, and we'll have 5 or 6 poets all banging away on typewriters making poems, with maybe a couple working over somewhere else for overflow. I mean, it gets really, you talk about poetry on demand, there's real demand. And the thing, people who've done it for years come and join me, and people who've never done it before, because they're excited and thrilled about it, will come and do it too. And I had a young trans person who was taking a suggestion from someone, and he said, I don't know if I can do this. They're asking about, they want a poem about like motherhood and being a parent and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, fake it, because you're not, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the person. You don't have to be that person to write a poem about that experience, even if it's something that you have no connection to whatsoever. And I've written poems for, people about, I've written poems about Jesus. I've written poems for people in recovery, and I don't know anything about either of those. I mean, I don't not know anything, but I am not that person. So the trick is to very quickly put yourself in their shoes. And I've commented before that I'm not trying to write the poem you want. I'm trying to write the poem that I think you think I can make for you in 10 or 15 minutes. So it's some gymnastics, but.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
That is fascinating and terrifying.
I want to join you. I'm going to find you. I want to do it.
Everybody that does it for the first time is hooked and like, where can I get a typewriter? Like they want to strike out on their own and do it. So yeah.
That's awesome. I have a question for Ellen that sort of what you were saying, Tony, made me think of, and that is writing in a character's voice, maybe someone that you don't necessarily know. And I'm really curious about the voice of your narrator, Ellen, because she has so much character, from the way she phrases things, and then all the touch points and pop culture, and just this idea of seeing her color. I'm just curious, where did she come from, and how do you sort of dive into this character and bring it to life?
Yeah. I think, initially it came from this idea about, that experience of finding that magazine, finding the dirty magazine, which is one that many, many people have had. But I wanted her to see it differently. I didn't want her to see the nudity. I wanted her to see something else there. And that was really the starting point, that she was going to be looking for her colors and not noticing the nudity or the taboo of it. She's going to be totally obsessed with that idea of color. And, you hear fiction teachers talk about obsessions as a real driver for character and story. And the other thing I've done is, as I've worked on my fiction, I'm a big believer in imbuing your stories and your characters with all kinds of unique, authentic detail, and letting that sort of move the narrative forward. So, I start to think about, what are the things that she's going to notice? Something's going to shine for her, like the light off the front of the candy store, because she's a young girl and she cares about candy and stuff. And so I try really hard to infuse those kinds of details, which then sort of take on a life of their own, and finally I really know who she is and what it is she's after. And I really wanted her to be relentless in her quest, so she's going to use the last magic cube blast to try to get that nude picture of herself, and she's going to approach this photographer who she really doesn't know, and have him come into her house and do it, take that picture. So it is that. It is starting with a strong idea, looking for a bit of a twist with my characters, and then really imbuing it with as much detail as I can. You can always take detail out. But if you really feed your story with all of that, then you're going to find that there are touchstones, as you said, places that you can land on that are going to help you understand them and move the narrative forward. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was curious too, if you knew how it was going to end before you started. I know you taught a class on endings, and it really could have gone somewhere very dark.
Right.
And I was pleased to see that it went somewhere I would never have imagined it going.
Yeah, I didn't know the ending, but I did know that I did know what kind of a character Jasper was, and he wasn't somebody who was going to take advantage of a young girl, but again, I tried to just stay on this idea of her obsession. So even after she's left all this behind, when she sees that the photos are out there, she's going to try to see what her colors look like, and then I just couldn't resist that, but to have it in black and white, I just couldn't help myself. So she still lives in mystery with all that, but yeah.
We have a question from Lisa. She said, "Thank you, Ellen and Tony. I was wondering from both of you, how do you decide when something you wrote is finally good enough?"
Tony, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Good enough is probably a key phrase there. Because, well, I think it's okay to leave things, to not say everything. I think it's okay to leave some things open for interpretation. And so, but there's also the danger of course, of not having gone far enough, of not told enough or said everything that could be said. So kind of like Ellen was saying, it really comes down to the details, and you really pack as much detail in and worry less about what it means or what you're saying. And I feel like once I get to the point where I have removed myself from it, and I'm less concerned with what I think it means, and I'm talking about my poems, not so much fiction or prose, but I'm thinking, when it gets to the point where I'm just happy with the experience reading it, and I'm less concerned about, does this say what I want to say, or does this mean what I want to mean? Because that's paragraphs, and that's not necessarily a poem. Um, reading a synopsis of a poem is pretty uninteresting and unsatisfying. I would rather have the poem. And so when I'm happy with when I'm satisfied by the experience of reading it, and a little surprised that it came out of me, that's I'm getting there.
I love what you said here, and I think I'll just piggyback on that, which is this idea that the details themselves take on meaning as you go along. They really do, and you don't have to make them mean anything. They take on that meaning themselves, and so. And as you said, there's that point when you read it over and you say to yourself, "Wow, where did that come from?" Kind of a feeling. And that's probably pretty much when you say, "Okay, I think I've got it," on to the next thing. Yeah.
I've been reading a lot of William Carlos Williams. I'm a huge fan of the Imagists, like E. Cummings and
Oh, I love him.
yeah. And their idea at that point in time of modernism and like the early 20th century, their whole thing was, you don't need to explain what the image means. You just need to nail that image. You need to just solidify, like, it's kind of cliched now, but William Carlos Williams, the red wheelbarrow, you don't need to explain what it is. Your brain and your whole experience will fill in all the, it fills in everything for you. You just have to, man, you get those chickens in there and the glistening with the rain, and man, it's just like, you see it, you really see it and feel it, even though what does any of that mean? Well, it doesn't matter. You've already meant something by nailing those details. So
Thank you so much.
thank you. Appreciate it.
We have time for one more question, and it looks like Katie has a question for Ellen. She wants to know what you're working on now.
Okay. So I've actually have a novel that I'm sending out now. That's the story of, it's a dual narrative, the story of a mother of a child who has past life memories, and the soldier whose memories the child has, told back and forth. And then currently working on a novel set in Hawaii about a female astronomer who's left her mother in Cleveland, back home in Cleveland. Her mother has ALS. She's in Hawaii. There is a celestial discovery. There is a Hawaiian surfer that she gets romantically involved with. And there are protests on the top of the mountain where the observatories are. So she's right in the thick of it. There's a lot going on. So hoping to find a home for that one. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. That sounds great.
That sounds
I
incredible.
just have to
Yeah.
ask, where did that come from? I mean, I've
Yeah.
done some crazy stuff, but holy cow.
So it came from, so there was a news item about a thing that moved through the skies that was neither asteroid nor comet, and it had a strange shape. And I thought, well, there we go. I thought, I'm going to do a story about a celestial discovery. And then all the rest, you know, they say get your characters in trouble. Well, let's have her best friend, who's her mother, have ALS. Let's have her have two boyfriends, one of whom's a native. And the other thing is that, you know, she believes in science, but the Hawaiian people believe in the spirituality of the land. And so there's a clash right there. I don't know, honestly. I mean, as I kept working on it, I would come across items that like things about the protest and things about other stuff. And it just kept rolling, you know, I don't know, just absolutely carried away with it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Thanks.
I miss getting carried away. Well, thank you so much, Tony and Ellen. This has been wonderful. We will put the recording of this up on our YouTube channel. Yes, we have a YouTube channel. I don't know what it is offhand. I'll have to look it up, but I'll be posting it tomorrow. So please join us next month on the second Thursday of the month. I know we have 3 wonderful poets joining us, and I wish I had their names up right now. So you'll just have to check back with us to find out who we're bringing. But thank you so much for everyone who came out tonight, and have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. I loved your stories so much.
Oh, I really appreciate the chance to read with you. It was really, really nice. And thank you, Tony. I really enjoyed your stuff.
I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
your
Thank
stuff
you. Really
too.
like your story, Ellen. Thank you. And I'll be in
Thanks.
touch with you too. Definitely. Thanks.
Super. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.
Have a great night, you guys. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
You too.